If you can't pay, don't come. I nodded and left his house. The next morning, I checked my phone. All for my family. No one had even called me. Be honest, if your brother stole thousands from you and your parents told you to let it go, would you involve the police? Or would you just swallow it and pretend nothing happened? My name is Emily. I'm 32, live in Chicago, and work in corporate finance. My job is the kind where people talk numbers at lunch and go home to empty apartments. I rent a 2-bedroom in Lakeview. Most of my friends from college are still here, but we see each other less these days. My family is in the suburbs. My father, Harold, my mother, and my younger brother, Sam. We meet for birthdays, holidays, the occasional obligatory dinner. My father started a construction business when he was young. He built it from nothing, or so he says. He talks about hard work, earning your keep, not taking handouts. He's proud of what he's done, but it's also a wall he keeps between us. Everything in our family has a price tag. If Dad gets a table at a restaurant, he expects someone else to pick up dessert. If you borrow anything, you return it with interest. He calls it teaching responsibility. My mom never argues, just nods and passes the potatoes. Sam used to joke about it, but now he plays along, too. Growing up, I learned to calculate every favor. I'm not sure when I stopped expecting anything from my parents. I pay my own rent, handle my own bills, send birthday cards with checks inside. We don't talk about feelings. We talk about jobs, market rates, who owes whom a lunch. Even at family events, there are rules. Dad likes to make a show of being fair. Last year, at Thanksgiving, he stood up before dessert and announced he'd bought everyone's plane tickets, then handed out envelopes with the exact amounts we owed him. No one was surprised. I wrote him a check by the sink, while my mom boxed up leftovers. That night didn't seem different from any other. The little humiliations felt normal. If you'd asked me then, I would have said the cost was worth the peace. I never thought he'd cross a line he couldn't walk back over. The steakhouse still smelled like burnt butter and charred beef. Dad was at the head of the table, slicing the last piece of his birthday rye-bie. He'd already had 2 bourbons. Claire and Stephen were across from me, both in their usual pressed clothes. Marcia, Dad's new wife, kept checking her lipstick in the side of her steak knife. Dad reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. He laid it on the table with a little tap, then looked around like he was waiting for quiet. Conversation trailed off. He opened the envelope and slid out a stack of glossy, color-printed pages, each one with cruise ships, sparkling blue water, and the word itinerary in bold at the top. He handed the first copy to Marcia, then one to Claire, then Stephen, then finally to me. The paper felt heavy. There were dates, ports, and a list of all-inclusive experiences. 7 nights, 2 islands, and some private dinners. Dad cleared his throat. "So this is it," he said, grinning. I figured it was time for a proper family trip. "We'll have a suite. Everyone gets a balcony." He tapped his page. "It's a luxury cruise, not one of those bargain deals." Stephen nodded, looking over the wine list instead of the itinerary. Claire started reading the excursions out loud: snorkeling, a wine tasting, a guided hike. She seemed excited, but her voice was extra bright, the way it got when she was nervous. Dad leaned back, looking straight at me. The numbers sat there for a second. He folded his hands. "If you can't pay, don't come." He didn't smile. No one said anything. I glanced at Claire. She looked down at her water glass, twisting her wedding ring. Marcia dabbed her lips again and pretended to read the menu. Stephen cleared his throat but didn't look up. I nodded, kept my face blank. "Sure," I said. "That's fine." Dad watched me for a few seconds before he nodded back, satisfied. He pushed the envelope, to the center of the table. "I'll email everyone the payment details tonight," he said. "Let me know by Friday. I want to book this before the prices go up." Claire finally looked at me, but only for a second. Her eyes were careful. Marcia started talking about how much she loved the spa on cruise ships. Dad cut her off, asking the waiter for more bread. Stephen glanced at his phone under the table. I folded the itinerary and slid it into my purse. My hands felt cold. The check came, and Dad put his card down with a little flair, glancing at me as he did. He said, "You all can get the tip, right?" Claire and Stephen nodded right away. I nodded too. Dad smiled, like it was a test I'd passed. We walked to the parking lot together. Marcia told Dad she was cold and hurried to their car. Claire gave me a quick hug, not tight, more of a pat. Stephen waved, already unlocking their doors. Dad called out, "Don't forget Friday. If anyone has a problem, let me know." He smiled wider at Claire. Not at me. I said okay and got in my car. I watched everyone drive off before I started the engine. The itinerary slid around in my bag as I drove home. No one called or texted. The steakhouse lights went out as I pulled away. When I got home, I made a cup of tea and took my laptop to the kitchen table. The overhead light buzzed. I went through my bank account, the spreadsheet I always update after the first of the month. Rent was due in a week, and the numbers looked tight. I kept clicking back to the window with my checking balance, watching it like something might change if I checked again. My phone vibrated against the table. I ignored it at first, but then my email pinged. The subject line was family cruise payment. I opened it. Dad's assistant, Anna, had sent an invoice PDF. The email said, "Hi, attaching the invoice as discussed. Let me know if you need the payment details. Thanks, Anna." There were no extra words. I stared at the attachment for a while, then flipped over to my budget again and tried to figure out what I could move around. I could skip groceries and just eat what I had in the freezer. I could put off getting my car serviced. Maybe I could use my credit card, but it was already carrying a balance. I replied to Anna. "Can you send the payment link?" I kept it short like she had. I closed the laptop so I wouldn't look at the numbers anymore. My phone was still flashing. I picked it up. Marcia had texted, "Don't worry if you can't come, it's not a big deal." I read it twice. There was no question mark. No emoji. It was the kind of text you send when you want to make sure you said something, but don't actually care what the answer is. I didn't reply. I set the phone face down on the table and pressed the side button until the screen went black. The tea had gone cold. I dumped it in the sink and listened to the sound. I could hear the refrigerator motor humming, nothing else. I went to the bedroom and changed into an old shirt. I left my phone in the kitchen. When I brushed my teeth, I checked my reflection. My face looked tired, but the kind of tired that doesn't go away with sleep. Lying in bed, I watched the ceiling. I tried to remember if Dad had ever paid for anything like this before. Last summer, he'd booked a rental house for all of us at the lake, and he hadn't mentioned money. Marcia had picked the place that time too. I wondered if she'd split it up then, or if this was new. I got up once to check my phone, but I didn't turn it back on. I plugged it in and switched it to airplane mode. The screen glowed for a second, then dimmed. I lay back down and listened to the house. There was a drip from the bathroom sink, steady and slow. I pulled the blankets up and tried to list the things I could sell if I needed to: old textbooks, a spare lamp, maybe the jacket I never wore. I didn't sleep for a while. I kept thinking about the invoice and the way Marcia's text sat there, like a closed door. I tried to remember what it used to feel like when family trips meant something different, before everything had to be calculated and itemized. The quiet pressed in around me. I didn't move. The numbers kept running through my head, silent and cold. My phone buzzed at 6:32 a.m. I was awake but not out of bed, staring at the ceiling, letting the silence stretch. I saw the bank's name flash on the screen. 2 missed calls, then a string of texts. Fraud alert. Unusual activity detected. Please verify recent charges. I sat up. My hands were cold. I thumbed through the notifications. Then I saw the email from my bank, with the actual invoice attached. No spelling errors, no fake links. The charges were real. I opened the PDF. 6 adult tickets, 2 children first class Venice. The names weren't listed, just custom group itinerary. I scrolled to the bottom and saw my home address. My phone vibrated again. Another fraud alert, this time about my card being added to a new device. I checked my Apple Wallet. My Visa was gone, then back again. I pressed details. Last used, 2:13 a.m., location home. I opened my laptop and pulled up the invoice again. There was something off. I right-clicked the file, checked the properties. Author, Dad. Last edited, 2:17 a.m. The previous version said Dad's assistant. Now it was different. The file had been sent from his email, not his assistant, S. I got up and walked out to the kitchen. The apartment was quiet. I stared at my phone, then at the email again. The subject line was, "Thank you for confirming payment." I searched my sent mail. Nothing. I checked my texts. At 1:53 a.m., there was a message from Dad, just a thumbs-up emoji. I hadn't replied. I called the bank. The woman on the line sounded tired. She asked if I'd authorized the charges. I said no. She put me on hold. I stared at the wall and listened to the music. When she came back, she said the charges had been approved through a device on my Apple account. She asked if I'd shared my login. I said no. I walked to the window and looked down at the parking lot. My hands shook, but only a little. I pulled up my shared devices list. Dad's iPad, Dad's phone, both still listed. I'd forgotten to remove them last month after he borrowed my login to watch something on Apple TV. I remembered him asking for my passcode. I'd given it to him, not thinking much. He'd sat at my kitchen counter, tapping away, saying he needed to set up his apps. I texted him. "You used my card. No answer." I waited. At 7:12, he finally replied. "Needed to get the tickets locked. We'll pay you back. Don't stress. No apology, just that." I read it twice. I opened the travel invoice again. 8 tickets. 6 adults, 2 children. His wife, her 2 kids, my brother, his girlfriend, and their twins. Not me. I checked the dates. The trip was scheduled for 2 weeks from now. There was no ticket with my name. I called him. He let it ring out. I called again. Voicemail. I typed another text. "You bought tickets for everyone but me on my card." A minute later. "Didn't have time to grab yours. We'll sort it. Stop making this a thing." I stared at the phone. I could see my own face in the black screen. I thought about the last time he hugged me, last Christmas, one-armed, distracted. I went back to my laptop, opened the bank app, and watched the pending charges stack up. The kitchen clock ticked. For a second, I wondered if maybe this was a mistake. Maybe the agent booked the wrong card. But the file property said Dad. The ticket count matched his family, not mine. I closed the window and shut my laptop. I pressed my palms flat on the counter and tried to breathe. My card wasn't just charged overnight. Someone had gone into my accounts, used my digital wallet, and left me out of the trip. It was all right there, in the numbers and the silence. The fraud line puts me on hold for almost 15 minutes. I sit at the kitchen counter with my phone pressed to my ear, staring at the living room clock. The last charge flashes in my head, just over $600 processed at the steakhouse last night. My card is sitting in my wallet. I haven't gone anywhere since then. I keep thinking if I missed something, if there was a way I authorized it by accident. The rep finally answers, her voice sharp and practiced. She asks for my security details. I say them without thinking. She pulls up my account. I listen to her type. She says the charge was made with my saved card credentials, not a physical swipe. I ask her for the location. She tells me the device was recognized from an IP in Westfield, my parents' suburb, not mine. I ask her to freeze the card. She says she will, and I'll get a new one in 5 to 7 business days. She asks if I want to dispute the charge. I say yes. She says there will be an investigation. I hang up. The kitchen feels too quiet. My phone buzzes again. Claire's name lights up on the screen. I answer. Her voice is low, almost cautious. Did you pay for everyone? No, I say. I pause. Someone used my card info. I just got off the phone with the bank. She doesn't speak for a few seconds. I hear a TV somewhere in the background on her end, then nothing. Dad told us you offered, she says, almost like she's not sure if she believes it herself. I let the silence sit. I picture the table last night, my dad ordering wine, my mom laughing. I remember him nudging the bill toward me, saying thanks, sweetheart, like it was nothing. Claire was on her phone, barely looking up. I never offered, I say. She exhales. He told us you wanted to, that you said you'd cover it as a thank you for helping you move. He said you said it to Mom in the kitchen before we left. I close my eyes. That never happened. I know, she says, her voice tight. I figured. But Mom seemed convinced, and he said you'd be embarrassed if anyone brought it up. I hear something clatter on her end. She lowers her voice even more. Are you okay? I'm fine. I already froze the card. The bank's looking into it. She sighs. I can't tell if it's relief or frustration. He shouldn't have done that, she says. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. She hesitates. Do you want me to say something to them? No, I say. Let the bank handle it. I'll talk to him. She's quiet for another beat. He's been acting weird lately, she says. Money stuff, I think. I don't know. I nod, even though she can't see me. I'm tired. I just want to not think for a minute. I'll let you know what the bank says, I tell her. Okay. Let me know if you need anything, she says, and hangs up. I put the phone down and look at my hands. My knuckles are white. I let go of the phone and press my palms flat to the counter. I keep thinking about my dad's face at dinner, how relaxed he looked, how natural it all seemed. Like it was nothing to him. I parked at the curb and sat for a moment with the engine ticking. The house looked the same as always, white shutters, neat hedges, silent windows. I got out, locked the door, and walked up the drive. The front door was open, just a crack. I knocked anyway. Inside, I heard Dad's voice from his study. Marcia was nearby, hovering in the hallway, pretending to rearrange a vase. She looked up when I came in. Dad didn't look up from his laptop. He was sitting at his big desk, the one with the green blotter and the lamp he never turned on. I stood in the doorway. Why did you tell Claire I was paying for the trip? He didn't answer at first. He closed a document on his screen, slow, like he had all the time in the world. Then he shrugged. You're the one with the fancy job, aren't you? I pulled up the invoice on my phone and held it out. The recipient line had been changed. My name was typed in as the payer. The last time I'd seen it, it had said family account. I watched his eyes flicker over the screen. He didn't even pretend not to understand. "Don't make a scene," he said, quiet, glancing at Marcia. She smoothed her shirt and stepped closer. "We just assumed you want to," she said. "You always say you want everyone together. And you can afford it, can't you?" I didn't answer. On the desk, next to his elbow, was a printed itinerary. I leaned in and saw my name listed as payer in the corner. The dates, the hotel, the rental car. All of it under my credit card number. He saw me looking. "It's not a big deal," he said. "It'll make things easier." There was a sound from the hallway, Claire's voice, uncertain, calling Dad's name. She came in with her phone in one hand and a printout in the other. Her face was tight and pale. She held up her email. "My invoice is blank," she said. "No charges." "Did you say you de-cover it?" Dad didn't answer. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded. Marcia looked down at her shoes. Claire looked at me, waiting for confirmation. I shook my head. "I never agreed to pay for everyone," I said. "I agreed to book the rooms. That's all." Marcia started talking. "You always help out. You said you wanted to." And Dad cut her off with a raised hand. "It's done now," he said. "Don't drag this out." I could see Claire staring at her paper, then at me, then at Dad. She looked tired. She looked like she wanted to leave. I put my phone away and pointed at the itinerary. "This is fraud," I said. "You changed my authorization." Dad just looked at me, flat and tired. "Nobody is suing anybody," he said. "You're making it a bigger deal than it is." Marcia stepped in, voice soft. "We thought you'd want to do something nice. You know how tight things are for us." I didn't answer. Claire shifted her weight and put her phone in her pocket. The room felt crowded. I noticed for the first time that there were 2 suitcases by the door, Claire's and Dad's, half-packed. The sound of the fridge cycling on in the kitchen. Claire finally spoke, her voice low. "I don't want to be involved in this," she said. "I just want to know who's paying." Dad looked at me. I looked back. No one spoke for a long minute. I could hear Marcia's breathing, shallow and quick. I turned and walked out. No one stopped me. I heard the front door click behind me, soft as a sigh. I sat on the edge of my bed, laptop open, the city outside quiet for once. I hadn't turned on any lights. The apartment felt colder than usual. I clicked through my email, then browser history, then the travel app. I kept going over the same 3 days in my head. The timing, the way the flights were booked and canceled, my name showing up on the payment confirmation, but not on the passenger list. Something didn't add up. I knew Dad was involved, but I needed proof. I needed something I could hold in my hands, or forward or print. I opened the security tab on the travel app. There's a section for recent logins. I never looked at it before. The list had 3 entries from my phone, all normal hours. Then one from Chrome, Windows 2, 09 a.m. 2 weeks ago. The IP address was familiar. Numbers I'd seen before when Dad set up the router at their house and wrote them on a sticky note. I stared at the numbers for a long time. I checked the location. It said Springfield, my parents' neighborhood. I took a screenshot. I opened my phone and dialed the travel agency, the same one that handled the group booking. I tried to sound casual, like this was something I did every day. "Hi, I need to confirm a booking from last month." "Yes, under Peterson." "No, not my flight, my father's." "Yes, Harold Peterson." I gave them the dates. The agent sounded bored, like she'd heard every story before. She tapped on her keyboard. "Okay, I see it. Booked for Harold Peterson, Paid by Emily Peterson. Does that sound right? My own name, read back to me like a punchline. I swallowed. Yes, that's right. Can you send me a copy of the signed agreement? For my records. I said it in the same tone I'd use if I was asking for a receipt at a grocery store. She hesitated, then asked me to confirm my email. I spelled it out. She said, "You'll have it in a few minutes," and hung up. I waited, watching the inbox refresh itself. I looked around the room. There were some dishes in the sink, a jacket on the floor, my shoes lined up by the door. I noticed how still everything was. I thought about the last time Dad was in my apartment, helping me move a bookshelf. He drilled the holes too deep and laughed about it. That was before all this. The email came through. Travel authorization and payment terms, Peterson. I opened the PDF. The first page had my name at the top, then Dad's name as the passenger. The payment section was filled out with my card numbers. The signature block had Dad's handwriting, the slanted H, the looping P. Underneath, it said Emily Peterson in the print box, but the signature itself was his. The timestamp matched the two, 09 a.m. Login. I saved the file. I saved everything, screenshots, PDFs, even the call log on my phone. I put them in a folder on my desktop and labeled it Peterson Proof. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel shock. Mostly, I felt quiet. Like the final piece of a puzzle was in place, and now there was nothing left but to look at the picture. I closed my laptop. I sat there a while, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. My anger stopped buzzing and settled into something heavier, something sharper. I thought about next steps. Not calling him, not confronting him, not yet. I wanted him to feel as sure of himself as he always did. I wanted the ground under him to be steady until I decided to move it. I got up, poured a glass of water, and stood by the window. I sipped it slowly, watching headlights pass. The city kept moving. I waited for the sun to rise. I didn't want to sleep. I didn't want to miss anything. I stared at my phone, the forwarded email to Claire still unread. I waited, checking the time, wondering if she was at work or just ignoring me. Half an hour passed. Then, her name flashed on my screen. I picked up and didn't say anything first. She sounded tight, her voice smaller than usual. "I saw the email," she said. "Did you send that to Dad?" "No," I said. "Just you." She took a breath. "Okay. Look, Dad asked for my card last night. After you didn't answer his text. He said he'd split the bill if you didn't want to cover it. But then Marcia told him to just use yours, said you wouldn't mind, you always do." He shrugged and said fine. There was a pause. I heard a TV in the background, muffled voices, like she was in her living room. "So you knew?" I asked. She made a sound, almost like she was about to cry, but caught herself. I didn't want to fight with him. He snapped at me when I said it felt weird. He said, "Don't start, Claire, your sister can afford it." Marcia gave me this look, like I was being difficult. I waited. She kept going, her voice getting flatter. "Stephen told me not to get involved. He said you probably wouldn't even notice. I asked him if we should say something, but he said it was family stuff, and you were used to it. I don't know." I felt something shift. I'd expected Claire to be oblivious, maybe, but not this. Not Stephen, too. I pictured their faces at the table, everyone acting normal while my name got passed around like a credit card. I said, "That's a lot, Claire. Why didn't you just tell me?" She went quiet. "I don't know. I guess I thought it'd blow over. Dad gets so angry when I argue with him. And Marcia, she always takes his side. I just wanted the dinner to be easy." I could hear her breathing, shallow. I pictured her on the couch, knees pulled up, hair in her face. I said, "Did you know how much it was?" "No," she said. "I assumed it'd get split. He's always done that before. They used my card for the whole thing." She was silent. "I'm sorry," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I should have done something." I didn't answer right away. I kept it flat. "It's not just about the money." She said, "I know." I waited. She didn't fill the silence. I asked, "Did anyone else know?" She hesitated. "I think Marcia told Aunt Janet not to mention it, because she started to say something about paying her share, and Marcia just cut her off. Said it was handled." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I said, "I need some time, Claire. I'm not mad at you. I just need to think." She exhaled, shaky. "Okay. I'm sorry. I mean it." I ended the call. I put the phone down on the table and just sat there, staring at my hands. There was nothing left to say to Claire, not now. I hadn't expected Stephen to be part of it. I hadn't expected my sister to fold so easily. I thought about all the times I'd picked up the bill without a second thought, how automatic it had become, how invisible I must have been sitting right there. This was more than Dad or Marcia. This was everyone deciding it was easier to let it happen. I realized how small I felt in that moment, how outnumbered. I stood up and closed my laptop, the email still open behind the screen, and went to make coffee, hands steady, mind blank. The quiet was heavier than before. I opened my laptop at 7:10 a.m. I didn't shower or eat. I sat on the edge of my bed, the blue light cold on my face, and logged into the bank portal again. The withdrawals were still there. The account was still empty. I downloaded the statements, saved them as PDFs, and started a new folder on my desktop. Evidence! I went through my phone, found every text and email from Marcia about borrowing my card, and took screenshots. I exported a call log, showing the times she'd called me that week. I even saved the email from Dad about helping Marcia out just this once. There wasn't any anger left. Just a methodical checklist in my head. I opened the city police department's website. There was an online form for financial crimes. I filled in my full name, date of birth, address. I wrote, "Unauthorized charges to my credit card by a family member, Marcia Lamb, DOB 1969. Card was taken without my consent. I have attached relevant documentation." I uploaded the PDFs, screenshots, and a scan of my signature on the original credit card form. Under "Are you willing to press charges?" I checked yes. After I hit submit, I got an automated reply. "Thank you for your report. An officer will contact you within 48 hours. I saved the confirmation email in the folder. I drafted a new email. The subject line was "Unauthorized use of my card, police report filed." I attached every document again. I addressed it to Dad, Marcia, and Claire. I wrote, "I have reported the unauthorized use of my card to the authorities. All evidence is attached." That was the full body of the email. I signed my name at the bottom. No explanation, no apology, no warning. I sent it at 7:49 a.m. My phone started buzzing within minutes. Dad first, 3 missed calls, then a voicemail. I didn't listen to it. Marcia's number came up next, over and over. Then Claire, once. I sat on my bed and watched the screen light up, then go dark, then light up again. I didn't touch it. At 8:13, I went into my contacts and blocked Dad's number. I blocked Marcia's. I left Claire unblocked. The house was silent, except for the washing machine in the other room. I didn't hear from Mom. She'd never been involved, but I checked my email just in case. Nothing. By 10 a.m., my phone was quiet. The only notification was the email confirmation from the police and a receipt from Claire. Dad and Marcia hadn't opened the email yet. I opened the window and let the cold air in. I sat on the floor and looked at the folder on my desktop. It was named simply Evidence. I went through the documents again, not reading, just making sure each one was there. I didn't feel relief. I didn't think about what would happen next. I just kept checking off tasks in my head. Emails sent. Numbers blocked. Police notified. At noon, I made toast and ate it standing up. The house still felt the same. No drama. No big confrontation. Just a quiet morning, and then a new file on my laptop. I heard the mail carrier outside. For a second, I thought about my dad's voice, what he would say if I picked up. I pictured his face, red and tight, trying to sound calm on the phone. I sat back down and closed my eyes for a minute. My phone stayed silent. The only thing left was to wait. My phone buzzed at 8:02 a.m., right as I was pouring coffee. The name on the screen was Detective Martinez. I set the mug down, wiped my hand on my slacks, and answered. "Good morning, this is Detective Martinez. I wanted to confirm a few things with you. You said the travel charges started last Thursday." "That's right. I never authorized them. I didn't even know about the booking until yesterday." He asked me to spell the agency's name, then listed the exact amounts. I repeated them back. He sounded careful, not rushed. He said the bank's fraud department was already in touch with him. They defrozen the card and started a formal investigation. He asked if I'd be available for a statement at the station that week. I said yes, any time after noon worked best. "I'll call you when we have the paperwork ready," he said. "If anyone contacts you about the charges, don't answer questions. Forward everything to me." After I hung up, I checked my email. There was a message from the travel agency. The subject was booking on hold pending verification. They defrozen the reservation because the payment was disputed. They wanted me to call and confirm my identity. I replied that the booking was fraudulent and that law enforcement would be in touch. My phone rang again, Marcia's number this time, but I knew it would be Dad. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, another call. I declined it again. No message. I switched over to work email, trying to get my head into something ordinary, but I couldn't focus. It was like my brain was running 3 conversations at once. What I'd say to the detective, what I'd say if Dad showed up at my door, what I'd say to HR if this leaked at work. I closed the report I'd been writing and opened the company portal. The request form for time off sat there, blank. I typed in personal legal matter and selected 3 days, starting tomorrow. I didn't add a note. My phone buzzed again. A text from Claire. He's furious. Marcia is blaming me. I felt a small, cold relief. I typed back, "This isn't my problem anymore." She replied after a few minutes, "Are you okay?" I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say to her. I set the phone down and went to the kitchen for more coffee. At the office, I stopped by my manager's cubicle. She looked up, surprised. "Can I take a few days? I have a legal situation and might need to meet with police." She nodded, eyebrows raised. "Anything you need. Just let me know if you want me to loop in HR." I said I'd handle it, thanked her, and walked back to my desk. I saw a few coworkers look up as I passed. I kept my face blank, sat down, and opened my laptop. I started making a list of everything the detective might ask for: bank statements, email threads, screenshots of the booking. I made a folder on my desktop. The rest of the day slid by in pieces. I answered emails, sat in on a meeting with my camera off, and checked my phone every hour for updates. At lunch, I ate alone in a corner booth and didn't look up when someone from accounting walked by. By late afternoon, the travel agency had sent a second email. They'd officially canceled the booking. The charges were still frozen. The bank confirmed that the investigation was underway and said not to worry about payment for now. My phone stayed quiet after that. No more calls from Marcia's number. No new texts from Claire. Dad didn't try again. I closed out of my work apps at 4:59, packed my bag, and walked out into the cool parking lot. The sky was dull and gray. I sat in my car for a minute, watching the dashboard clock, and let myself breathe. No one else needed anything from me tonight. I put the car in drive and went home. The call from Marcia came at 8:12 in the morning. I saw her name on the screen before I picked up. She never called this early. Her voice cracked right away. She didn't even try to make small talk. "Claire, it's all ruined. The cruise line canceled our trip. They said it was for unforeseen circumstances, but your father thinks someone called them. Did you do something?" I heard sniffling. She didn't wait for an answer. She started talking about the deposit, about how they'd been planning this for months, about how your father is furious with the travel agent, and how she felt embarrassed telling their friends they weren't going after all. I listened without saying much. I think I said, "I don't know what you're talking about, Marcia." She kept talking. She asked if I was mad about something, if I'd heard anything from the bank lately. I let her fill the silence. She circled back to the deposit. They might lose it, she said, and it was a lot of money. She started to cry again. I heard the sound of her blowing her nose. I told her I had to get ready for work and hung up. She didn't say goodbye. 10 minutes later, I got a text from Stephen. I hadn't heard from him in almost 2 weeks. The last thing he'd sent was a thumbs-up emoji after I told him Dad had called. His new message was short. "You didn't have to go this far." He didn't say anything else. No punctuation. I stared at it for a while. I closed my phone and put it face down on the desk. I made tea and stood by the window. The street was empty, except for a delivery van double parked across from the building. It was raining, but just a little. I drank the tea standing up. Then I sat down again and checked my email. There was a new message from Detective Martinez. The subject line was just my father's last name. The body of the email was 3 lines. "Your father refused to answer questions about the forged signature. We are closing this part of the inquiry unless you wish to pursue charges. Let me know if you have any questions." I read it twice. I didn't reply. I closed the laptop. I thought about the last time I spoke to Dad, how sure he sounded, how quickly he'd ended the call. I folded laundry. I listened to the washer run. My phone buzzed once, but I didn't check. I remembered Marcia's voice, the way it broke when she talked about the money. I tried to picture them standing in the kitchen, looking at the printout from the cruise line, arguing about what to tell their friends. I wondered if Dad blamed her, or if he was just angry at the world. I went for a walk around the block. When I came back, there was nothing new. The apartment was quiet. I thought about Stephen's text again. I didn't write back. I made lunch and ate it at the table. I wondered if he would ever say anything to me about it, or if he would just let it go. I wondered if he understood what had happened, or if he still thought he could fix it somehow. The rest of the day went by slowly. I read a book. I answered a few work emails. I got a robocall from a number I didn't recognize. I didn't pick up. Before I went to bed, I checked my phone. No new messages. I put it on silent. I lay in bed and listened to the sound of the rain on the window. The apartment was quiet. I thought about what would happen next. I tried not to picture their faces, when they realized the vacation was gone. I tried not to think about Steven's text. I closed my eyes and waited for sleep. I woke up to 3 missed calls from an unknown number and 1 text from Michael, my old coworker at Dad's firm. The text just said, "You see the news. Call me." I stared at my phone, not wanting to move. I'd been careful, but the last few days I kept expecting something to snap. I called him back and stared out the window while it rang. He picked up fast. "Hey. You up?" His voice was quiet. "Yeah," I said. "What's going on? You didn't hear from your dad yet?" "No." "Why?" He let out a breath. "It's everywhere." The partners had a meeting at 8. Some notice from the bank, something about a flagged transaction. Your dad's company account. A big international booking for flights, hotels, and a bunch of travel agency fees. Looks like they're investigating. I kept my voice flat. Did they say his name? Yeah. It's his card, his sign-off. Everyone knows. The auditors are coming in. People are talking. He paused. "I think he's in trouble, Rachel." I pressed my thumb into the table. "What did he say?" "He hasn't come in. HR said he's on leave. Official review." "You okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "Thanks for telling me." He hesitated, then said, "You know, I always thought you kept your head down too much around him." "Guess not." I didn't answer. We said goodbye. I walked to the kitchen and made coffee, listening to the silence in the house. The next message came from my mother. It was just, "Call me." I deleted it without reading the rest. I could imagine her voice, tight, anxious, already spinning the story so she'd look innocent. I sat at the table and stared at my mug. Outside, the street was quiet. I opened my laptop and scrolled through my dad's company's website. Usually his face was on the homepage, smiling at meetings, shaking hands. Now there was nothing. Just a list of partners and a generic press release about internal compliance reviews. I checked the local business news. Third headline down, "Senior partner on administrative leave pending investigation." They didn't say his name, but the details were clear. Unusual personal expenses, flagged by routine audit, linked to large travel agency payments. The comments were already filling up with speculation. I saw his assistant's name mentioned, rumors about who else might have known. Nobody mentioned me. I closed the laptop. I thought about the way he'd always talked about honesty, the way he'd scolded me for being wasteful or careless. How he'd told people at dinners that his reputation was everything. How he'd made me pay for my own mistakes over and over, no matter how small. I remembered the day I handed him the receipts for my own moving expenses, and he spent 10 minutes looking for a single missing meal charge, as if I might be lying. I waited for his call all morning. It didn't come. At noon, I walked outside and sat on the front steps, letting the cold concrete seep through my jeans. I watched the mailman pass by, the neighbor's dog barking. I felt empty, but clear. By the afternoon, Michael texted again. They're bringing in outside counsel. He might be suspended. He said nothing else. That night, I left my phone on the kitchen counter and let it ring when my mother tried again. I ate dinner in silence. Every sound in the house was sharp. Every time the floor creaked, I looked up. I kept waiting for the old feeling to come back, the one where I'd done something wrong and needed to fix it. Nothing happened. I finished eating and washed my plate. I knew the review would be slow, that he'd try to talk his way out. But I also knew the paper trail was clean, the facts wouldn't chain. He could spin and blame and minimize, but the people he cared about, the ones he'd tried to impress for years, would see the truth. I wouldn't have to say a word. I waited until the last pending charge disappeared from my old bank account, then closed it over the phone. They asked if I wanted to leave a forwarding address. I said no, just send any mail to my apartment for now. After I hung up, I called the new bank and set up two-factor authentication on every login, every card. The woman at the branch said it was becoming more common, people locking everything down. She didn't ask why I was moving. I didn't tell her. I went home and cut up my old debit card with kitchen scissors, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but plastic shards and that little gold chip. That night, my phone rang twice. Mom's number first, then my brother S. Both went to voicemail. I deleted the messages without listening. I put the phone on Do Not Disturb for the first time in months. The only call I answered was from the bank's fraud team. The man was polite. He said the refunds were in process, that the investigation had closed, that I wouldn't be responsible for any of the fraudulent charges. He sounded tired, like he'd told 10 other people the same thing that day. I thanked him and hung up. I started packing for a trip I hadn't planned. I booked a small room 2 hours north, paid in cash at the front desk. I told work I needed a personal day. I didn't give a reason. It felt strange, buying a bus ticket with bills instead of tapping my phone. I stopped at an ATM from my new bank, took out enough cash for the weekend, and left the old neighborhood without telling anyone. The hotel was quiet. My room overlooked a parking lot. There was a single chair by the window. I sat there for a long time, watching people come and go. I didn't check my phone. I didn't want to see any missed calls or texts. I ordered takeout to the lobby and picked it up myself. No name, just the room number written on the bag. I spent most of that first night sitting on the balcony, eating cold food, listening to the sound of distant traffic. The next morning, I walked to a bakery down the street. I paid for coffee and a pastry with cash. The girl behind the counter smiled, said she liked my jacket. I thanked her and left. I sat on a bench outside, watching the sun come up over the strip mall, and felt nothing at first. Then just quiet. It was the first morning in a year I hadn't woken up to a notification, a request, or a demand for help. I finished my coffee and threw the cup away, just another person passing through. Back in the room, I turned my phone on for a few minutes. No new calls. No messages. I scrolled through old photos, deleted the ones from family dinners, holidays, the trip last summer where we all pretended everything was fine. I kept the ones of myself, alone in the park, at work, in the mirror. When I powered the phone off again, it felt lighter. The rest of the trip was simple. I walked. I read a book I'd started months ago and never finished. I went to bed early. Nobody asked me for anything. At night, I thought about the last few weeks, the calls, the accounts, the voices on the other end of the line. I thought about the feeling of being watched, counted on, drained. It was still there, but smaller. Less sharp. On the last day, I checked out before noon. I paid the bill in cash, kept the receipt. The desk clerk didn't ask any questions. On the bus home, I sat by the window and watched the highway roll past. I wondered if anyone would call again. I decided I wouldn't answer, not for a while. Maybe not ever. When I got home, I left my suitcase by the door and made tea. The apartment was quiet. I sat down and listened to the silence, just to see how long I could stand it. The email from HR came at 8:13 on a Wednesday morning. It was a single line. The charges in question have been reversed. Your response and documentation are on file. I sat there at my kitchen table, looking at my phone, watching the words flatten out any lingering hope I'd had that someone, anyone, might reach out with an apology or even a question. Nothing else came from them. No calls. No texts. Later that day, my dad's company sent out a memo. It was 2 paragraphs about reimbursable expenses and how to keep personal and business costs separate. My dad's name wasn't attached, but the timing was obvious. I read it once, then deleted it. I blocked my parents' numbers. My brother S2. I went through my social media and unfriended every cousin, every aunt, every lingering tie. My phone felt lighter. I kept waiting for some kind of reaction. Maybe my mom would try to call from a work line, or my dad would send a single-word email. Nothing happened. A few days passed like that. I woke up, made coffee, went to work, came home. The quiet felt strange at first. Then it started to feel like relief. No more waiting for a message that would never come. No more checking my phone for news about someone else's mess. I made a new calendar for myself. Birthdays I actually cared about, reminders only for me. I didn't tell anyone at my office what happened. They saw the memo, probably guessed something. But nobody asked, and I didn't offer anything. I got used to the silence. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was enough. 6 months pass. I get a birthday card in the mail with my name on the front, just my first name, written in block letters. No return address. Inside is blank, except for the printed greeting. I recognize Claire's handwriting on the envelope, but she didn't sign the card. I put it in a drawer with old receipts and expired coupons. I don't open it again. Dad's business makes the local paper. Something about necessary restructuring. He calls it downsizing when he talks to me, but he doesn't talk much these days. I see posts online from people I grew up with. Their parents are looking for jobs now. Some have moved away. Dad sends me a link to his new consulting website. I don't click it. My new credit card sits in my wallet, untouched except for groceries and gas. I check my balance every week, not because I have to, but because it reminds me that nothing's missing. I don't get texts from Claire anymore. Last I heard, she moved in with a college friend and got a job at a coffee place that doesn't ask about her last name. On my birthday, I hike the ridge above town. I leave my phone in airplane mode. There's a spot near the top where you can see the whole valley, the neighborhoods, the strip malls, the little airport. I sit there until the sun goes down. It's quiet. No one else comes up. I can see my breath when I exhale. I think about the house where I grew up, the one Dad still lives in, and how the lights always used to be on in the kitchen when I came home late. Now, when I drive by sometimes, the blinds are closed and the porch is dark. I walk back to my car in the dark. I don't feel much of anything. I just start the engine and drive. If your family took something from you and then waited for you to pretend nothing happened, what would you have done? I know some people say keeping the peace is worth any price, but I'm not sure that's true. At what point does silence just turn into letting them walk all over you? I never planned to become the person who forces things into the open, but I guess that's what happened. Do you think confronting them was right, or would you have tried to forgive and move on? I'd like to hear from people who have been through something like this. When family loyalty and self-respect don't line up, which one do you pick? Comment below. I'll read every story or piece of advice. If you want more real confession stories, subscribing and liking helps me keep sharing. Maybe someone out there needs to know they aren't the only one who's had to choose between family and fairness. So, if you were in my place, would you have let it slide, or would you have brought it all into the open?